Oh, I'm had my mic muted that whole time. That was my fault. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cyber Journey Show. My name is Zach Hill. I'm excited to be here with y'all. I have Markus Schober here with us. He's joining us, and hopefully I said your last name right there. He is the author and instructor of the Practical Windows Forensics course on TCM Security on our academy. And I think I put the link in the chat. If not, I'll put it there again just so you guys can see that. But excited to have you on the show with us today, Markus. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Zach. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited too.
Yeah. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background on who you are, and we'll talk about your journey.
Yeah, happy to do so. So, yeah, hello, everybody. See people are busy in the chat. So my name is Markus Schober. I'm the author of the Practical Windows Forensics course, like Zach mentioned, on the TCM Security Academy. And my journey basically has always been for the last at least 10 years or so on the blue team side. So that kind of what made me focus on building courses and training for blue blue teamers basically out there. But big picture. I'm originally from Austria in Europe, and started out in IT. Started out in back then it was early 2000s as a hardware electronics engineer. That kind of got me into electronics, hardware, a little bit of software programming. For those who remember, back then it was Nokia, and I worked for Nokia and those phones, fixing those. Where it was still a little bit more exciting, diving into hardware and everything. Did an apprenticeship there as an electronics engineer. That kind of made me dive more into software engineering, was working for a developer. And I always had a huge passion for web applications. I built my own websites back in the 2000s, a little bit of HTML, JavaScript, and maybe PHP, but that was it. Try to break those. Never really got anywhere because that just wasn't really a thing out there to get a job in that field yet. And so I was, more going the conservative route and built web applications, Java applications, all kinds of stuff for many years, while also then later on doing going back to university, doing a master's degree in computer science. I wanted to dive deeper into security. It still was just like a minor kind of side thing for the most part. So I kept doing programming, but at some point started working for a cybersecurity company as a developer. And yeah, the rest is kind of a history which got me here.
It's awesome. Let's throw it back real quick. What initially got you interested in technology from the start? Can you remember back that far?
Yeah. I think it's always been, I was always kind of interested in computers back in high school, and back when I was getting our first internet dial-up modem, late 90s, I think. And I actually was playing computer games for a good amount of years. Counter-Strike was kind of one of those things that I just got roped into for a couple of years until I quit, came back out of my basement, and started to get a real life. And so, that was always the thing. And so I always had love to have LAN parties with my friends and travel around different tournaments, building web applications, like I said. And as part of my job, I was lucky enough that I was kind of in the field as well, although a little different. But I guess it's always been a part of my kind of, what I do for joy and also what I did professionally.
For sure. So do you still play games or anything just for fun? Or are you kind of out, grown past that now at this point, or don't have time for it?
Yeah, honestly, so I remember back then we were roped into Counter-Strike and just a couple other games. And that was the time when the World of Warcraft, the beta version, came out all the way back then. And I started playing with my friends, and I saw, hey, this is just whoever's going to spend more time is going to get stronger and better and more successful. And that's literally when I just pulled the trigger. And since then I haven't touched the game anymore. I just decided to quit because I saw it was too time intense.
Yeah, no, I can completely understand that. Well, I respect that wholeheartedly too, because sometimes I wish I could put down the game sometimes, and I feel like I don't even game that much, but I can respect that hustle for sure. So when you were venturing through your career, and you said you got interested in security, what was the initial thing that kind of maybe sparked that you're to transition into more of a like
Mhm.
security related roles or interests? Is there something that like happened to you, or did you see some, some vulnerabilities, or what was that initial like, oh man, I think I actually like this. Like I want to go down that route.
Yeah. What I remember was like my first couple attempts of breaking web applications, which was basically started to build some web applications, started to teach myself JavaScript from a book and all these kind of dry and kind of crazy stories that back then was a thing. But it was always, I was always more interested in, like, I've heard about people like web applications, SQL injections, and like JavaScript attacks, and these kind of things just always kind of fascinated me more than actually building the application. So I remember back then there was like one or two websites that kind of were teaching like a little, like giving some instructions on going how to go about this in early 2000s still. And I was, understood SQL injections and JavaScript stuff, and I wanted to do that more, but there was not much more out there really as in terms of a job, rather than like getting a computer science degree or working as a software developer, maybe a systems engineer, which back then I didn't even know was a thing, so I couldn't even start doing it. So it was just breaking some web applications, building them and breaking them, what got me into it. And then later on, I was just hoping for more. Back at university, I wanted to get into network hacking, and that's when we had some Backtrack, or now Kali Linux boxes, and we learned like the Cisco CCNA and the networking part of it, and that was really was like what interested me more and more, and that's kind of set me up for even more later, which then got me all the way into forensics and incident response.
Yeah, so that's exactly where I wanted to go to next, is how you got, how did you go from basically hacking web apps to now like creating a Windows forensics course? How
Yeah.
did that all come about? Like that's an interesting kind of journey, if you will.
Yeah, I think it kind of came naturally. I was always kind of ended up on the blue team side. I wanted to do the attack part, but back then it wasn't a job really, or at least not in my area. So I couldn't just do it, and it always was like it just remained a hobby for like occasionally. And later on, when I was a software developer, you got to build things, and you got to like harden those web applications, and you got to look into secure authentication and network traffic, and all these kind of things that go around it. And this is, you learn about encryption, and you learn about all the fundamental kind of skills. And so I always wanted to do kind of security, but I was mostly just producing code and building applications. But I was lucky enough that once we moved to the States about 10 years ago, my first job was actually, and I always had a huge passion for entrepreneurship and startups, so I was looking for a job there rather than for the big corporations. And my first job ended up being working for the startup company that actually was, building a security incident response platform. And so I was a consultant there to like deploy this platform and integrate it with the SOC tools and like different customers' environments, which got me the big exposure of, hey, this is how a SOC runs. Hey, this is the roles, this is the playbooks, this is the tools that they're using, this is the data that they need to ingest. So I came from an engineering side, I think, and was fascinated by it, and I wanted to do more and see more, and that kind of evolved. And then our startup got bought out by one of like a major company that which now it's one of their products in the portfolio. But that gave me the opportunity to move within the company, move into the incident response like specialty consulting group, which basically then from then on I was doing digital forensics. I still had to learn digital forensics, but I had some good amount of background in web applications, software development, knowing some tools, being able to build out these playbooks and processes, procedures, automation for clients. So that kind of what got me in there. I'm lucky that my manager back then just went easy on me and was like, kind of not too much into like the lack of my forensic skills. But I was really fascinated by it, and I think I took those opportunities to pick them up as quickly as I could, and love to pass them on and teach them. As every single case that I had something forensics that I learned something new, I was happy to share, and I was happy to just have others kind of be able to do that as well. And so that's kind of what led me to where we are at these days.
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome, man. So, and now you have the practical Windows forensics course, which is, geared to help people learn, understand more about that side of, the industry. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what made
Yeah.
you want to create this course first of all, and then who would this course be best for?
Yeah. So, like I said, when I was working as a consultant, I had a huge passion for learning and also sharing what I've learned. And I think, and I saw, so actually, within that role, I like evolved into, I became a team manager, and I love to work with new team members. Some of them were like straight out of college and were like crushing it. And I just wanted to like enable them. I just wanted to keep like have them like, succeed and learn more and not be blocked by corporate, BS. So really, it was more like the practical way of trying to help people and also trying to share what's out there, because I know blue teaming and learning those skills is hard out there, because you can't just set up an application and try to break it, right? You need to have something that's compromised first of all. And that was always kind of the big challenge. I was always thinking, well, how can we like create realistic scenarios that teaches people, where people can like learn those skills that you need out there. And so yeah, I guess, as opposed to red teaming, on the blue teaming side, there's not as much, they didn't used to be as much content out there. And so I was kind of, thinking about how to teach my team forensics and what to look for and which tools to use. And there's a couple of, there's a handful of tools that are open source that most people in the industry are familiar with. And so it just had to find out about how to go about like creating content that people can use to investigate. And with over the last couple of years, there's like some better kind of some really good options out there as well. Like I'm using Atomic Red Team, which basically allows you to simulate an attack. So you just start a script on a Windows host, and it just simulates an attack. And this is our kind of piece of evidence, if you will, to like that we're going to use to apply some forensic methodologies and skills, and using tools that are open source to investigate it and see what's going on, following best practices. Just that's something that people don't really get exposed to too much if they don't haven't done it in the field, if they're not working in the field. And that's, I think, the one piece that is kind of the secret sauce of it, is like, how would you go about a forensic investigation, right? Where do you even start looking? Because there's tools out there, there's little labs out there, there's like some content that you can use out there, but how would you like cohesively go about investigation from start to finish, figuring out who has done what, when, where, how, what are the different artifacts that are important? Yeah, and I think Windows, like 99% of organizations run on Windows, so that's why I was really eager to teach something, to get something out there which is like very practical, hands-on, and applicable to the real world.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a lot of great feedback from your course too. So a lot of people have enjoyed it, got a good use out of it. So that's always good from our perspective to hear. We love to see that. Who would be like the perfect like person for this course? Like, is it somebody who's just like getting started in security, or maybe somebody who has some fundamentals, or maybe they're working the help desk and they're looking to transition? Would this be an option for somebody? What type
Yeah.
of like prior experience should somebody have going into a Windows forensic course like this?
Yeah, I think it's pretty broad actually, because I wasn't really sure after finishing the course. I wasn't even sure, like, is this kind of like an intermediate now? Is this advanced? Is it beginner? I wasn't really sure if beginners would struggle, because forensics is technically something that's, I guess, a little bit more like not so beginner friendly, depending on how you approach it, I guess, or how you teach it. But I wasn't really sure. I just want to put it out there and see what happens. I know that it was something that even like experienced people can just benefit from, because it's pretty, I would say, comprehensive. So there's always a trick or a thing here and there that they would probably learn. Of course, they might know 80%, but still, there's filling those gaps is sometimes important. And even I learned a lot when just building this course. There was like some details that you just, take for granted sometimes, and then you have to explain them and you have no idea how or what it actually really does. And so there's a lot of kind of gotcha moments for me while even building the course. And I wish I'd known a lot of those things in my career when I was just still doing this. And so it helped a lot, even for advanced, for me, when I was like, I would consider myself like, I've done it for years. So I've kind of advanced, and there's some feedback from people that were saying, yeah, it was a great refresher. It was a great like gap filler for certain things that I never really understood well. But then a lot of people that haven't even worked in the field yet at all have taken it. And so far I've barely heard, I don't think I've heard from anybody like, really struggling or just like quitting. Of course, it might happen, but I think it is also a great exposure and beginner friendly in terms of you can follow along. You don't have to have advanced knowledge in anything. You can just really just get around by, if you can create your own VMs and if you can run a script from there, you just need to download your tools and go from there. And some of the feedback I've heard is, if you're investigating Windows systems, of course, you got to understand Windows, right? There's a lot of important artifacts. There's important event logs. There's, the internals of Windows are just the memory, the disk images. There's like important evidence that, as a forensic hater, you need to understand and how to, first of all, follow the forensic process in terms of data acquisition, and then how to examine it, and then dissect the data and analyze the data, interpret the data, which is even more interesting and important. But people just learned a lot about Windows itself, right? A lot about what's the registry about, what does it do, why is it so important, how does it work, how can we use it to analyze things. There's event logs. Like, why does every corporate environment have like collecting event logs and have alerts on those? There's so many things, and what are the limitations and what should you be looking for? Now we also have a script that automatically installs sysmon on top of additionally to the event log, so that we have much more granularity and visibility into what happens on a system itself. So I think it's people, even if you don't want to, if you don't see a forensics career ahead in your journey, it's just a deep dive into how Windows works, how Windows systems work. And if you want to attack them, that's a important, you probably have a couple important takeaways from there. And if you want to defend them or analyze them, same thing. So I think I wouldn't really restrict people to, hey, I want to have a forensic career and I need to take this course just because of it.
Sure. No, I also just kind of want to highlight, and I wanted to hear your answer to this, but all the courses that we develop for TCM security, your instructors develop, are all supposed to be hands-on. They're supposed to be as practical and as hands-on as possible, so anybody can kind of sit down and follow along with it. And that's exactly what you've done with this course as well. Anybody can really, from any level, can sit down with it and absorb and understand the material and gain something from it, which I love. And again, that's, I think, how all of the courses are developed here at TCM. But the other thing that you kind of said was, as you were actually creating this course, and teaching it, like, you learned things along the way. And I think that's really funny that you bring that up, because one of the things that we always tell people as they're going through their learning journey is to actually sit down and record, something that you're learning, and try to teach that. And it's not to share with anybody necessarily. You could just record the video and save it on your computer, and you don't have to show anybody. But the purpose of it is, you are going to end up learning and figuring out things that you've never even thought about before, by going through a process of trying to then essentially regurgitate this information that and I just want to highlight that, because you had said that you learned something just from going through that process. And I think that's so critical, because I remember that when I was learning Python, I've shared this story before actually, but I was trying to put together the script that was going to scrape Indeed for jobs. And I sat and worked on this script for weeks, and I started recording myself going through, just talking to myself as I was writing it out, and just reminding myself, all right, well, this section of the script does this, and that, does that, blah, blah, blah. And it got to this point, and in my recording and going through and writing the script, where I finally got it to work. And I was so excited. I just, the pure excitement and joy that I had from actually making it work was one of the coolest things. And I went back, I was like, oh my gosh, I recorded this, and I watched the replay of it, and just that pure, the look on my face, that made me feel so good about what I had just done. And I would encourage people to do that, because sometimes that little bit of encouragement, that little bit of excitement that you get from something like that, can really help excel your learning journey. It can make that learning journey a little bit more fun or exciting. And it helped me tremendously. It helped me learn new things, because I was able to refer back to that video. But yeah, I just, what was that experience like for you when you were like, oh my gosh, I just learned something new, what was that like in that moment?
No, it was exactly like you were saying, right? as part of your job, if you do that, then you develop certain like processes and procedures. You just move as quickly as you can because time is money, literally, and you don't have time to, if there is a company under attack, I can't just take a day off and like read up on certain things that I might not fully understand. So that's just, you just skip over a lot of things. And so, just like you said, you need to do things hands-on so that you actually learn really like what it's about. You learn little details that if you just watch a video, if you just do something passively or read a book about something, you might have heard about the concept, but that by no means means that you have like you're able to like apply these the skills or whatever you just read about. And so to me, this was an eye-opener in some points to, first of all, finding a way to explain those things, because I was, there was sometimes like things of, okay, should I put this into the course or not? Should I talk about it or not? Should I now really do another day of research in order to try to come up with a way of explaining it or not? And I just really wanted to make it as cohesive and as comprehensive as possible so that people like are not skipping any fundamentals. That's why there's like a deep dive into registry. Or one time I remember there was a part called Mcache. It's like an execution artifact. And so many times now in hindsight, I know that reports that are been written in the industry about forensic investigations are oftentimes like the facts are sometimes wrong, because it says like application so and so executed on time so and so, which actually, if you dive deeper into like understanding a particular artifact, that that's just the timestamp doesn't exactly explain when something executed. So there's the little details that really really matter a lot, because sometimes you might like base an entire investigation of a certain timestamp, but if you know what this timestamp is for, where the timestamp is from, which kind of artifact and how it's generated, it might not always just imply your assumptions. And so assumptions and those kind of things is something where you just need to do hands-on like skills development to build your experience, to really understand like fundamentals, how things work. And I would always recommend that. And this is why the courses on TCM Academy, I just always keep referring people to that as well, because if you do it hands-on, it's just a million times more effective. You never forget the things that you do wrong, because there's the one right way to do things, and all of a sudden it's like, of course, this is how it works, and you're never going to make those mistakes again, right? And that's just back then when I was working with my team, I know a lot of my team members were always referring to learning by pain and suffering, and it's really kind of the way, right? You have to go to do it. You have to go the hard way. You have to like do things wrong. Many times people struggle with lab setups. People struggled with getting certain things, exploited or hacked, or people are struggling with finding, in response and forensics, kind of finding the right artifacts, the right evidence. And you just gotta keep doing it and pushing in order to find out how it works. And then you never forget, and that's just gonna make you better, and you might get you more experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was just like thinking as you're talking, like back in my day, like, but it's true. Like back in our day, like we didn't have, like Google wasn't what it is today. We didn't have
That too.
YouTube. YouTube didn't even exist back when we were starting. And all we could do is pick something up and try to break it and then try to fix it. Like that's how we learned, and or you went to the library or, the bookstore and bought a book that was like, this thick and try to weed through that. And that's not fun. But yeah, that was the way.
No, it is absolutely. It's just, any minute, any hour you spending hands-on is always much better than like just watching something, reading something passively. Just follow along, just keep doing it hands-on.
No, I agree 100% with that. So I'm going to ask you a question here, and you may not be able to answer it just due to the nature of your work.
Yeah.
But do you have any crazy forensic stories that you could share with anybody about, anything that you've experienced, through your career? I would love to hear it. I mean, I'm definitely to hear like anything cool. So go for it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows, over the last several years, ransomware has been extremely prevalent everywhere. And so that was basically my life. For us as a consultant, we got pulled into those ransomware attack cases every day, every week. And it was just jumping from one case to the next case to the next case. So, that takes forensics a little further, right? There's a lot of different roles and ways of how you can apply forensics, right? There's like law enforcement, there's e-discovery, and then there's also like, incident response. And that means where you have to know what to look for quickly, pull those artifacts, get those indicators indicators of compromise out, and then just respond to contain, to eradicate the threat actor. So there's a lot of like incident response that goes into like, in tandem with forensics here. And so, anybody in this on this kind of side of things, as a consultant, you just keep jumping from case to case. And that's another one of those, going back to the earlier topic of if you just do so many cases hands-on, you just learn so much, rather than sitting in the same environment all your life. You might not even see like a big case ever in your whole career. As a consultant, you just get to see a lot. You get exposed to a lot. Of course, it's stressful, and of course, it's not always fun, but you're just also learning the hard way a lot. And so for some of those cases, actually, I would say 90% of those cases over the last 5 years that I've worked on was ransomware cases. And so it was like big corporations that got attacked and ransomware was executed and data was stolen. And so when you do forensics there, you need to do it quickly and at scale. And so, it's always interesting later on because those cases take, several weeks mostly and to investigate. And so it's always interesting to just see kind of how everything started, right? To kind of, but you're making your way back. You kind of you're exposed to like a big mess. You've never seen the environment before. You have no idea the tools that are around. You have no idea about anything that you could be using there. You just need to get in and figure things out. And they all rely on you. They're like, well, can you fix it like by tomorrow maybe? And so I don't know what's wrong in your environment because I've never seen your environment in the first place. So it's kind of hard, so stressful. And that comes kind of with experience, right? To kind of still follow the same processes of, okay, let's kind of get a lay of the land and figure out what happened and try to contain as quickly as possible, scope it. And when you do forensic at scale, you kind of figure out, how many systems are involved or compromised, how many accounts, how can we contain that, and then kind of how did you get on there? Where did everything start? So like you're following this track, right, all the way from where we are now, all the way back to initial infection, initial access from the attackers, and that's then when you learn, who made a mistake and when and how, and sometimes it's the end user, sometimes it's the developer, sometimes it's the sysadmin, should have not clicked, should have not ignored. Sometimes it's the analysts. I have seen analysts that have caused major crisis because of flagging certain alerts, false positives, like for several times before it was too late. And sometimes it was just a misconfiguration that allowed an attacker to move laterally, which should have not been the case. And sometimes, it was just an end user, clicking on stuff, and a couple end users being affected, and just one of them where the attacker managed to break out, elevate privileges, move laterally eventually, sometimes within days, sometimes within months. It's really hard to, every case is different.
Yes, 99% of the time it's the end user, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly not the case. No, it's been the sysadmin, it's been the developer, it's actually been the analyst who just didn't understand what they were looking at and just, just flagged it as a false positive and just moved on with the day until they had to figure out. So it's not the end user so much, although they're getting hammered.
I'm just trying to play along with the whole thing, or really want the end users.
I know, but they're getting hammered with phishing emails, and I don't blame them, right? They're not even, first of all, mostly not even IT people, like savvy, and also the first line of attack, so they're getting attacked constantly. So there's a lot that plays together.
Are there any like specific incidents like that come to mind where like you just think about all the time that you can talk about, that's like it was either just like crazy, like the craziest thing you've ever seen, or the most interesting experience you had that you can maybe kind of talk about in a way that isn't revealing?
Yeah, I see in the chat there's some people that I've worked with, so they can relate. So I mean, it depends. But it depends on who is affected, right? I mean, it's if you work for a big corporation, their clients are big corporations, right? So if they're getting attacked, if they if they like can't operate, then they are losing probably millions of dollars every day that they are like offline. And so that's kind of what it is. If you get in there, they kind of rely on you to help them get things sorted out, figured out, restored, so to get them back to operation like as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of money on the line, and that's what they mostly care about. And this is the pressure that if you're the incident response lead, ideally you have some experience, you can deal with the people and the politics and everything that comes along with this, and the stress to coordinate the investigation. But sometimes it's not just any kinds of manufacturing companies or so. But I know I had a case with a hospital one day, and so that's where things are getting a little serious, because they wanted to know if they can perform surgeries on Monday or not, and it was Friday. So that's that was a whole nother level of stress.
Yeah, I can imagine. I come from a hospital background, so I feel that stress for sure. What is maybe the average turnaround time from the time you get called to you either being on site or remoting in and resolving the issue? Is there even such a thing as an average? I don't know. I'm just asking.
No, I think it's hard to say. No, it's not. Sometimes it's restoring everything takes months, because literally sometimes even the biggest companies need to start from scratch and start with a single domain controller and set everything up from scratch, because the backups are encrypted and everything on top of it. So that's the case.
A lot where they have to actually just go right back to starting a completely brand new domain controller. Does that happen?
Yeah.
Wow.
It has happened before, yeah. Sometimes it's contained. Sometimes it's more like, hey, a couple of computers are affected. If your domain controllers are affected, that's a whole different story, right? Because you just basically can't trust anything anymore in your domain.
Just burn that thing, right? Throw it out the window.
It's hard, yeah. But that's more like a remediation, restoring kind of effort. For us, for me, it was mostly like investigation was the focus. So figuring out what happened, scoping it, and also helping with containment. And then we mostly were gone because we left it off to the IT people. But that kind of usually takes maybe a week or two to fully get a handle on things. Sometimes quicker, sometimes not, depending on the tools, depending on how much control you have, over the environment. But it's definitely a couple of stressful days in that case, and there's no nights or weekends to just take a break and say, hey, let's see you Monday.
For sure. Awesome. Do you have any new courses or anything coming up that we can be looking for?
Yeah, so what I do these days is I started my own training company because of the passion that I was following. And I always, back then even I was working with clients to train them in that field. And I was working in the cyber range environments, building realistic exercise environments for clients. And so this is kind of what kind of made me try to get out there, do my own kind of exercises, trainings, and provide them to clients. So I'm working a lot with one-on-one with people, and working a lot with groups, like teaching them live on those things. That's kind of my main program, but I'm definitely hoping and trying to get this kind of program also chopped up into courses, so that which, as you know, creating a course is an insane amount of time. So I'm still planning on it. I've been working on it actually. And so one thing what I want to do is more hands-on. So I'm about to get a lab environment set up and running, already testing it. And so hopefully when that is ready, that would allow me to not just provide the content, but also provide the environments that people can use to test and train and develop the skills that they need from a very practical side of things.
Awesome. Where can people find you for that?
So yeah, my training company is called Blue Cape Security, and that's where I provide these training services. Again, working with corporations, working with individuals, and a lot more to come for sure.
Awesome. Just putting that in the chat so everybody can find you there.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
For sure. I don't have any other questions for you, but if you have some time, I'm sure that our audience might have some. So you want to take some Q&A from the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. And just want to say, with training, I have a couple live workshops coming up in some of those conferences. So I'll be at the Blue Team Con in Chicago in August. We'll be at the Wild West Hacking Fest in October, where you guys are going to be as well, right? So it's where we met last year. So there's some live training there as well if people are interested.
Yeah, it's sad that I didn't know about you said it was Blue Team Con, right? Again?
Blue Team Con Chicago, end of August. Yeah.
End of August. Okay. August 26th, 27th. I'll put that in the chat too. I don't know if I can make that one. I would love to make that one, but we'll see. I don't think I have anything scheduled during those days, so I might be able to make it out there.
Yeah, should
But
be a
if
good
not,
one.
I'll see you in Wild West, that'll be a good time.
For sure. Yes.
This isn't a question, but they said, I respect anyone who can put an entire course together, especially a good one. I respect you for that as well, because it is definitely a huge hurdle to overcome or to do.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the course was actually the reason why I quit my job because, I mean, it was definitely, those jobs were great and high paying salaries and everything was amazing. But I always wanted to get this course and some training out there, and working full time or more just didn't allow for that. And it was not possible. I was trying for like a year, kicking this down the road and trying to get a course, something going. I had a plan and I had everything there, but really like making the course and creating the content and recording everything and then cutting all those videos, that's just, as you know more than anyone, so much work that literally at some point I was like, well, do you want to do this or not? And then I basically just was, okay, let's quit the job, let's finish up this thing, and let's get more on top of it.
Yeah, I wish somebody would have told me how long the editing would have taken, like, as I was getting into it, because
Me
that is
too.
yeah. We have a question from Alex here. How do you stay up to date with new techniques, threat actors, and artifacts?
It's a great question. I think it depends on your background, right? Are you already working in the industry? Are you working as a blue teamer, red teamer? Are you a student just curious and want to read about things? Because that changes a lot, right? As a professional, you have access to a number of portals, tools, threat intelligence feeds, or communities that are just mostly commercial and commercially accessible. And this kind of information is the latest and greatest, is what people pay for, a lot of money. So as a professional, it's easier, I'd say. And there's certainly great blogs out there that big brands are often publishing. So one of my favorites, obviously following Microsoft Threat Intelligence. They always have great write-ups on latest and greatest threat actors out there. And there's a lot. There's some other certs of other companies that are providing good information. I do like, though, more like the community known companies, because these are not the big ones, but in the community well known, and they share a good amount of information. And one of those is, for example, Red Canary. They always have the developers of Atomic Red Team framework, for example. They always have a lot of tactical, really hands-on information on threats and how to detect them and prevent them. And so those are some of those great stories. And then just following a bunch, because other people keep sharing too, right? They just keep popping up on my news feeds because of other people too.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Jeremy asks, if an organization could only invest in their people, process, or technology, what pillar would you recommend and why?
Thanks, Jeremy. I love the question.
You know Jeremy? Is he giving you?
I've seen him before. So,
awesome. I love it.
No,
I love this. I love when people come in and just drill you with like the most ridiculous questions. I'm sorry.
He's one of my team members.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. You're the MVP.
Nice. So, but the question is a great one, because all three of them are equally important for a business. I think you can't just get the fanciest technology without people knowing how to use it, and without any skills. Processes is an important one, because if one team doesn't know what the other one is doing and how to quickly escalate things, and just even more on top, there's a lot that goes into it. So all three pillars are important, but my main focus these days, obviously, as a people trainer, course creator, is the people part. I just think everything lives and dies with people. If you don't have the right people, you will never get the most out of your technologies, because you can buy the fanciest tools. If the people are not up to well trained and skilled, they won't be able to use it. And if the processes, and people also create great processes. People are the ones that actually need to create the processes, that need to test the process, that need to test the tools. And I would always say, the great people and bad technology is still much better than the other way around, because people can maximize the usage of technology much better than the other way around. So I would emphasize on people, although all three of them are absolutely important.
I would agree. Always the people first, from my
Mhm.
perspective too. So we're on board there. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Regarding the Windows Forensic course on TCM, will there be any updates to it anytime soon? New info, methodologies, anything like that?
So the course itself is pretty much kind of like its own kind of system, because you start with an attack script and we then investigate everything that's part of the attack script. That would kind of mean, changing the entire, adding more attacks to the script and more ways to analyze them. The course itself, I'm not sure. Of course, there's here and there's some changes in terms of versions and updates that are needed, but potentially add-ons, like just like an extension or like advanced version or things along those lines, or maybe like more like a fundamental version, which is what I've been working on for quite some time now as well. So just complementary content, I would say.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Charlotte asks, are there any certificates in forensics that you would recommend, preferably less expensive ones than from SANS?
Yeah, I've done a couple SANS, so I know, if you have your if you have your company paid, great. Otherwise, it's a little tough. I know there's some forensic certs out there. To be honest, I have never looked at them and I've never taken them. I've never really looked into it because there weren't too many, at least until recently, I think. And I'm not aware of many. I think a handful or so might be out there, and I can't speak to the quality of it. Since I don't even know about it, I don't think it's like, something that you must have or must get. I think it's more cost value perspective, right? Do you really need a cert? If so, what is it good for? Are you doing it because you want to put it on your resume, or is your employer paying for it? If your employer pays for it, of course, it makes the decision much easier. If not, no, I don't think people need to go down the rabbit hole too much in terms of getting all those certifications before even having a job. I think you are better off just practical skills development in all kinds of shape or forms, and not just this exam. Of course, people want to accomplish something and want to be proud of, like, kind of have a final kind of like an end goal in mind, and I respect that for sure. But I don't think there's specifically a cert out there that you have to get into a job like that, for example.
For sure.
And I also, like, I've hired and interviewed a lot of people, and I'd say my experience was you can tell if people have a passion for it. You can tell if people have dabbled around with it. There's some people that are taking forensics courses at school, but some still, you could tell they didn't get a lot out of it, and some people were excited about it. And I interviewed one person one time that was like, yeah, she totally knew everything she wanted. She was like kind of supposed to know, but also went outside of it, right? She had kind of like, you could see she had like a lab, and you could see she was like little, just more into this, and also was able, and this is the most important part, to explain certain concepts, even though very limited, but explain certain concepts in certain ways, and also to make a clear cut of when, like, she didn't know things. Be honest, be upfront, and just say what you know. So that gives me a better idea as a potential manager to know, okay, what can I expect from her when she would be working for me? Because as an interviewee, you always think like you have to make up all the stories and just answer every question out there. But no, to me, I need to know how you can help me. And so I need to have you be able to jump on my team, and I need to know what your limits are and where we can develop, start developing skills, and also what I can expect from you on day one. And so that's much more important than making up all kinds of crazy answers and stories.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's one thing that we've been speaking with students about, I think, nonstop for forever now, it seems like. Because we're constantly talking about the interview process, and even doing mock interviews with people. And the biggest thing that we always love to stress is just to be honest. If you don't know a question, don't know an answer to a question, say that you don't know. And just kind of like a pro tip that I love to give to this: if you come across an interview, they ask you a question, and you don't know the answer to that question, say, I don't know, but this is what I would do to figure it out, or this is what I would do to learn more about it. Don't just stop and say, I don't know, and leave it at that. Make sure that you at least emphasize, like, okay, well, I don't know this answer, but I do know how to figure it out. Because that is instantly more valuable than you not knowing the answer. Like, it's okay to not know the answer, but like, it's not okay to not be able to figure it out in this day and age. So,
Yeah,
make sure that
exactly.
you emphasize that, and you will get so many brownie points from that, guaranteed, even if you don't know the answer. I promise you. So, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you recommend taking any criminal justice courses as school electives for a career in digital forensics? I think that's a great question.
That's a
Which is,
great question. Yeah, because forensics can be a lot of different things, right? So I've not taken those courses, and I can't speak for it. I just think if you want to, focus on staying in law enforcement, for sure, it is. There's so much digital forensics needed in law enforcement in all kinds of shape and forms, and definitely being familiar with criminal justice and law and all these kind of things along those lines is can certainly be very helpful. Absolutely.
yeah, that's kind of where my head was going. If you were looking this for a career in law enforcement or to be involved in law enforcement in some
Yeah.
way, then, I could definitely see some type of schooling in criminal justice or any of those
Mhm.
types of electives would be helpful for this type of career. So yeah, spot on. Um, what is the most effective way to start learning cybersecurity from your point of view as an expert? So somebody coming in brand new, what do you
Cybersecurity.
think they should do?
Um, Set up your lab. Like, just you know try to think about how, first of all, what do you want, where you want to go, right? Where you want to be. Do you want to be a cybersecurity professional? Well, that means you might most likely ending up working in an enterprise environment. If you're working in an enterprise environment, you first need to understand how enterprise environment work, and that mostly in a very, very, very basic way is a Windows environment, Windows domain controller, Windows hosts, maybe some firewalls, maybe some logs here and there. And basically that's the environment. And then you need to know, blue team, red team, or cybersecurity fundamentals. Just by building the lab, you learn a lot. I always encourage everybody, just try to set up your domain controller, try to get a domain controller ready and running, mess around with the freaking DNS and all proxy other kind of problems that come with it. Try to domain join with a Windows VM. Try to create a domain admin user. Try to create a domain user. Try to kind of figure out what you can do with one user versus another, and how you can move, maybe log on from one system to another, maybe at a firewall. And just by doing that, I think there's a lot of people that are considering themselves advanced in this field that probably have major gaps in that kind of area. And I always encourage everybody to just go back to the roots, learn the fundamentals, because how would you see, for example, if there's a pass the hash attack as an analyst? First of all, you need to know about it. As an attacker, but as an analyst, you're not always like familiar with those concepts. So I really love people to be exposed to both sides, blue and red. And then when you're the analyst, how would you go about investigating a pass the hash attack? Well, you first need to understand the concept, and then you probably need to emulate it somewhere, simulate it, to learn how to detect it, how to respond, or how to analyze it, and how to identify it. And so that means you need to have your lab. That means you need to carry out the attack, which is very simple. But then as an analyst, you then learn, like, there's only one specific log and event ID that you need to look for to determine a pass the hash attack and differentiate, see what's legitimate, what's not legitimate. Those are the things that, again, hands-on, but you wouldn't know if you don't understand Kerberos. If you don't understand like Windows domain environments, after all, and NTLM hashes and things along those lines.
Yeah. So my recommendation, based off of what you're saying, is you guys can take our PEH course, the Practical Ethical Hacking course, and you'll learn about just about it. A lot of the things that you just mentioned right there. So for sure, check that out. And if you have like a fast internet speed, it would probably only take you like legitimately maybe a half an hour to set up a domain controller. From downloading like VirtualBox or VMware, and then downloading like that Windows server ISO and spinning that up into a VM. Like it's a half-hour ordeal. It's very, very quick, very easy to do. And there are tons of videos out on the YouTube that can walk you through setting up a domain controller and getting you to the next steps. So just to highlight that.
It could take you days, like it did me on my first time, but no, I'm getting better. And I also see a question on, I hear setting up a lab a lot. So how to get started about that if you don't even know. So a pointer, if you go on my website, bluecapesecurity.com, there's tutorials on how to get started, how to set up your first lab, how to expand the lab to make it a little bit more advanced, and how you can actually attack and defend in kind of like, very limited but easy ways. So just check it out. That's what I put out there for, like, as tutorials to help people, to help, for exactly that reason.
And that's on your website, you said?
Yeah, that's on my website. There's some free tutorials exactly for how to set up labs and how to think about a lab when you're a blue teamer, and attack it first so that you can investigate it and things along those lines.
I also have a video that I put out a few years ago about home labs, and I kind of walked you through, like, what's the purpose of a home lab? Why would you even build it? Like, so that video might be helpful. I put the link to Markus's website in the chat, and I also put the link to the video in the chat as well. This question is more towards me, I think, from Ken Sherman. What do we think about the new Cisco cert support tech? Is it worth it today? It's a new, like, entry level certification from Cisco. I honestly have not looked into it, Ken, but what I can tell you is that it says Cisco, so it's going to have some marketability there, whether it's a good course or not. It's like, that's just like the fortunate side of it. It says Cisco on it, so people are probably going to like it. Whether the quality is any good, I cannot speak for. But if it's overtaking the CCT, then it's, it probably has some value, or some, there's information in there I think somebody's gonna learn, or it will be helpful for them, if you will. But I can't give you a solid answer on that. I'm sorry. And I saw you answer that question a few times, Ken. Sorry, Markus, just wanted to get that one real quick.
Yeah, no, I couldn't speak to it.
How I put it, has anyone ever thought about putting together a TCM sandbox as such to target younger audiences with fundamentals of computer science? Like, we are working on kind of like a practical, like, help desk type of course that will go through, like, fundamentals. So we're doing, like, more help desk related things, like a networking 101, security 101. So those things are coming to the platform. We're trying to take a step back a little bit and introduce all these fundamentals, and really get people introduced and interested in tech from the very beginning, and then take them through, their cyber journey. So that will be coming, Blue Corbel. Let's see.
That's pretty cool.
For those starting out in cybersecurity, seeking to go down the red team path, aside A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, what certifications would you recommend? Is there anything that you would recommend based on your experience? I mean, you're not so much on the red team, but do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, the question is, like, do you need a cert? Like, why do you just follow certs? Like, is there a specific need? Is there a specific reason? Is this the only way where you think, where there's like a guided kind of curriculum that you can follow to learn certain things? If that's the case, do you need a cert or not? But in any case, practical, whatever is practical. And I, again, keep referring to the, TCM Academy, pen tester trainings, because you follow along, you learn how to build a lab, you learn how to attack certain things, you learn all the basic and important concepts to know from an attacker side. Can't get any more practical. So if you do that, even as a blue teamer, you then switch the sides, to understand the red team, and then go back and try to analyze those and think about it, and how, in terms of how to prevent and detect and investigate those. I think, I wouldn't just focus always on red team, blue team so much, because I hope in the future, people are talking about the purple team, but really, it's a cybersecurity professional. Red teamers are just one part of a strong defense capability. They just help you in one way out of many different, like, components that are part of a strong cybersecurity defense. So it's blue teamers in different roles, red teamers are part of it. It's not just hey, it's just red or it's just blue and they can't do anything else.
For sure. No, I love that. I agree with that as well. I think we got time for maybe one or two more questions. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. But I do appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Markus, and share your journey with us, share your insights. Very much appreciated. I don't think, forensics gets discussed enough in the cyber realm. So it's good to, hear from you and what you're experiencing, and what you've gone through to get where you're at today.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing me on. It's a great time. Thank you.
For sure. Is there any questions out there that you wanted to answer that I may have missed, or anything you want to mention before we leave? I think I put the links to the website in there. I did. I think we're good. So
sounds good.
Awesome.
See you at the conferences.
Yeah, see you in at Wild West. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you again, Markus, for taking the time to share your journey with us. And stay tuned next Tuesday where Alex will be back. I don't know, he'll be walking you through something web app related, I'm sure. It's always an exciting live stream. So tune back to the live stream next Tuesday, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.